Good to see Tony Mullaney. Have a big cheer for Tony.
Number 47, Tony Mullaney.
Yes, all across. Let's hear it for the 47.
System change, not climate change.
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 She's happy. The one we didn't
No.
I know, well, that's why because I was a bit disillusioned about going out campaigning, but that's why I'm going to campaign hard, just to get, do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like less intimidating, do you think it's like that?
Are we not going along line? Just the one way, it's not the other way.
We're going to fill a lane in, Bob. Ralph.
We're meant to start, we're not told it.
Go ahead, mate, tell us. The human library, yeah.
Tories out! Now! Tories out! Now! Tories out!
Right, Dave. Oh, sorry.
Came back half an hour later and said, I'm doing some tests.
What was it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well. Stand by you.
Okay, comrades, welcome to the International Day here in Liverpool. Friends, comrades, brothers, sisters, and anyone else you want to include. Okay. Obviously, there's only about 5 or 6 speakers here, so you won't be need to get to bed in the midnight oil here, that's for sure. Okay, so before I introduce them, I just want to read this statement out, if I may. It's called Solidarity in Diversity. May Day is a time of reflection and remembrance of the global labour movement. It seems only fitting with our proud trade union traditions on Merseyside that are born of the diverse cultural communities that all trade unions, community groups, cultural groups and equality groups are invited to participate in a show of working class unity. The theme of the May Day is unity and solidarity across the city, across the country, across the world. For constant calls have been made, trade union rights, human rights, international solidarity and fighting austerity. International Workers' Day is the day that we celebrate the struggle comrades before us fought and won against the establishments. Our history shows that by standing together in solidarity, we can secure a fairer, more equal world for working people. In the words of the great working class hero James Larkin, the great appear great because we are on our knees. Let us rise and join us today in celebrating International Day. The first speaker, I'd like to say, is a guy I work with, but I certainly attended work with him on the docks in Liverpool, and that is, you know, our General is our General Secretary, Len McCluskey.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon, sisters and brothers, comrades and friends. Of course, it's always fantastic for me to be back in my home city. You know, no matter where I live or where I roam, my heart belongs to Liverpool. And I'm delighted to be here today to share this fantastic occasion with you. And I'm delighted to be standing on a platform with international speakers and with all kinds of representatives from the different elements of our movement. Especially proud to be sharing this platform with our very own Dan Carden, a member of Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet, and doing a fantastic job indeed. You know, I first started work on these Liverpool docks 50 years ago, and the Liverpool dockers taught me about values, taught me about solidarity, about community spirit, taught me about fighting back against the establishment. And solidarity is the very thing that runs through our veins. It's why I'm incredibly proud of my city, Liverpool. On this 30th anniversary of the Hillsborough disaster, this city and those families stuck together and fought for justice, and I'm so very, very proud of you. The same will happen for the Orgreave campaign, and of course the Shrewsbury 24 have just won a fantastic victory. Let's hear it for them. You know, the bosses don't understand. They don't understand how we keep fighting back. They don't understand, despite their power and their wealth, how we climb up after defeat and continue to fight. They don't understand it because that solidarity and community spirit that runs through our vein is something that they know nothing about. And that's why Workers United will always be victorious. And I want to thank everybody who's involved in those particular campaigns. As Kevin said, millions and millions of workers throughout the world come together on May Day weekend to celebrate, to remember the sisters and brothers and comrades who fought before us, to remember how they struggled in order to make certain that our freedoms were there. And that battle and those battles are still continuing. We still have to fight against the injustices that are before us. On Saturday I was in Sheffield. The confidence is growing in our movement. The first time they've had a May Day celebration for 30 years. And it was a great celebration indeed. Yesterday I was in Manchester. Again, the streets of Manchester ringing out to the calls for a general election and for the Tories to be out. And that's precisely what we need to understand. We need to understand that the type of attacks that we're under is what is desperately needed to fight back and to join together with trade unions. Of course, Thatcher hated that I hate even mentioning her name. She knew that by attacking the trade unions, that she would try to emasculate the power of working people. And disgracefully, New Labour did nothing to turn around those anti-trade union laws. I'm delighted, of course, that we've now got a leadership in Jeremy Corbyn, and John MacDonald has said that when they're back in power, they will repeal all anti-trade union laws. Our great cities are under attack. Our public services here in my own city, great industries replaced by insecure work, by zero-hour contracts, by low-paid work. And that's why trade unions are so desperately needed to embrace our young people. And fighting back works. We've just had tremendous victory in Camel Aids. 300 workers faced with the sack and redundancy. Our members went on strike, and we are beginning to save those jobs, and we will be successful. And you know, it's important for me to call out and say a big thank you to our Mayor, Joe Anderson, for the tremendous work that he's done behind the scenes. And while I'm talking about the Mayor and the City Council, it is an absolute disgrace that this Tory government has stolen £880 off every single person in Liverpool every single year. They've stolen that, the worst attacks on any city in the UK. And we've got to remember, comrades, just imagine what the City Council could have done with that money. We've got to remember who our enemies are. It's a Tory government that heaps misery on ordinary working people, and also, of course, makes an absolute mess of the economy. And what a mess they've made of Brexit as well. We are now forced into elections for the European Parliament that I don't suppose any of us wanted. And there's no doubt that many will say it's a waste of money and a waste of energy. But here in the Northwest, we face a special challenge. We face the prospect of having to defeat Tommy Robinson from election here in the Northwest. And we have to unite to do that, comrades, because the far right, the fascist right, are rising throughout the world, from the racist Trump in America right through Europe, from Italy, Germany, France, Austria, Hungary, Greece, even Sweden and Finland. The far right are on the move, and the only people who will stop them is our Labour movement. Robinson, UKIP, the Brexit Party, what they do, they exploit the despair within our communities, despair because of the neo-capitalist system that is destroying those communities. And instead of having anger, they take that anger away from the greedy bankers and away from the unscrupulous bosses, and they push it onto the weak and the vulnerable. They peddle the politics of hate when it is the politics of hope that we need. So, comrades, that's why we need to unite. You know, the leader of my union, the president of our union, Tony Woodhouse, another good Scouser, often says that whether we're in or out of Europe makes no difference if we still have a Tory government. Now, that might seem simplistic to some, but there's an awful lot of truth in it. And that's why we need to support Corbyn as he guides us through and guides our party through these difficult times indeed. We need to make certain that a Corbyn government is a possibility and a reality, not trying to undermine or criticise them. So I say to all of those who are seeking a second referendum, yes, I want a people's vote. I want a real people's vote. It's called a general election. So until then, stop your criticising, because what we need more than anything else, of course, is a Corbyn government. We need a government of the people. We need to be talking about the real issues, the issues that affect us every single day. And that is possible, a government for the people, for a real living wage, for homes to be built. It's time to banish zero-hour contracts, to invest in our public services and make our communities safe. It's time to save our NHS. It's time to nationalise the rip-off railways and the rip-off utility companies. It's time for the super rich and the corporate elite to pay their taxes, the greedy bastards that they are. And it's time to give our children hope. It's time for Labour. It's time for the many, not the few. Thanks, comrades.
Well, and just as a footnote to that, for those who aren't in any union, I think it's about time you got yourselves organised and get in the union. Because they're the only ones who are going to support you when your back's against the wall. Look at the history, look what happens. We all hope that we're never going to need the union, but it's nice to know that when the employer comes for you, you've got a union that's going to stand up and fight for you. So I advise anyone, all their kids or anyone else, get in the union. It makes sense. Our next speaker is Mary Doolan. I'm getting fed. Sorry, buddy. It's Mary Doolan from the PCS. She informs me specifically that she's an industrial officer and an equalities officer. That's enough. Okay, Mary.
Greetings to sisters and brothers and comrades here today. It's an honour and a privilege to have been asked to speak, and I've flown all the way back from Dublin and I'm half asleep, but I wouldn't miss this for the world. I come every year and I am so passionate about this event, and it's fantastic to see so many more people here, and we're growing each year. Today is about reflection and communities and about equality, and I am an activist in this city from the Irish community, and I want to talk to you today about how our minority communities have actually helped the Labour movement to the strength that it is today. In particular, I'm going to take you on a very quick history lesson. 1888, the Brighton May match strike. We have all heard of that. Women aged 12 to 15, rather girls, actually took on a very powerful employer and said no to the flossy jaw, to the actual where they lived and how they were being treated. They went on strike. They were 12 to 15 years of age, and they actually turned that around and got better terms and conditions. But unfortunately, there is a class issue, because the history has forgotten to tell the working class history. They tell you the history about Annie Besant and that she was the leader. She wasn't. There was young women that actually led that, and thanks to a book by Louise Raw, she's actually uncovered and named those Brighton May match girls. So they're no longer in historical obscurity. They're taking the rightful place in the Labour history that they deserve. And some of their names are Eliza Martin. Please a round of applause, because these sisters' voices are really important. Mary Driscoll, Martha Robertson, and most importantly, Sarah Chapman. She was actually put in a pauper's grave in London, and only by chance was her body found. We have now marked her grave because she deserves that history and the credit for what she actually did for young workers' rights at a time when women were being treated less favourably than even the male workers at that time. Then I'll take you on another little trip and give you another example of historical obscurity. We go international, because it is an international day of commemoration and reflection. And we go to America, 1912. We go to the one of what they call the underskilled uprising, the Lawrence strike. Again, this strike was hundreds of thousands of migrant workers who were undocumented, who had no rights, working in mills, being treated appallingly by employers, rose up. But it was the women who organised the strike. They went in lines, they put the young girls in the middle, and they put the older women on the end. And as they walked out smashing the windows, they actually took the beatings. They were being beaten because they were exercising their democratic right to actually fight back, actually having no rights at all and being classed as the unskilled. 1888, for me, epitomises the formation of what we call the labour movement today. However, the history books tell the story. It was a year later. It was in 1889 when the docks workers went on strike and the gas workers, because the gender at that time, it was more about men than it was about women. But those sisters were actually the catalyst to the movement we have today, and emboldened others to follow their courage and their convictions. And that happened in 1912 in the Lawrence strike. And everyone can tell me here, you all know Joe Hill? Yeah? Has anyone heard Elizabeth Gurley Flynn? One? Yes, exactly my point. She was an organiser with the International Workers of the World, a Wobbly. She actually organised with others that Lawrence strike. She later went on to form the Communist Party in America. That was that sister and what she contributed, and I want to mark her contributions today. Then I moved to Ireland, where I've just come back this morning, and we go to 1913. Everyone will know about the lockout, but I'm going before the lockout. The Jacob Bistus factory strike, can't say that with my teeth. And basically, women there, because 3 of them were told to take their union badge off, otherwise they'd be sacked, and they said no. They were sacked, and all the other workers walked out. That again was a catalyst for the lockout. Yet history attributes what actually happened in 1913 again to male workers. And as I say, all I'm trying to do is put the contribution of young women at this time in the rightful place in history. And we're seeing that today. Joe Hill wrote a song about Elizabeth Gurley Flynn when he was incarcerated, and it's called The Rebel Girl. And I embolden every woman here today, and every woman in the trade union movement. We are all rebel girls, because we say no to our employers when they're eroding terms and conditions, they're attacking pay, they're stopping young women from actually a work-life balance. We say no. We are the rebel girls. We are the pearl of the working class. And I would just like to say, in my union PCS, we have a 60-40 split, which I'm very proud of. 60% of our membership are female, and that is in the public service. And with regard to that, a lot of our members have to do work-life balance, and they have to juggle 2 or 3 jobs because the pay is so appallingly being paid for the job and the services that they deliver. But our members strongly and firmly believe in our union. And although we had a ballot that we didn't get because of the anti-trade union legislation over the 50%, it's the highest that we've ever achieved, and that is really positive for future actions that we will take, and it's a positive, not a negative. We missed it by a very, very small margin, but our members are emboldened because they've had enough, because permanent secretaries set a pay cap. They set it at 1%, yet they then got high, pay rises themselves, but our members, in real terms, it's a pay cut. And our members have been having a pay cut for 8 years, and the cost of living's rising, but salaries aren't. So they're having to hold down 2, 3 jobs. So you talk about work-life balance. So I want to just end on the words of the rebel girl. She's a precious pearl to the working class, is true to her class, and the fight for justice goes on. Solidarity.
Aside the student universities union as well, who are supporting to us as standing with us day and night. We can get to our right. And just we're gonna explain about the situation in the Sudan. Our government, al-Bashir, was in for last 30 years, and he was fighting part of the countries. First, he was fighting to the South Sudan about 21 years, and that is in the 2011 when it separated the South Sudan, escaped the Sudan, 2 parts, Sudan and South Sudan, and continually criminally and killing to the people in the west of the Sudan is called Darfur. About thousands of hundreds the people has been killed, and about 2 million or 3 million has been displaced. and that is one of them has been displaced at the moment I live in Liverpool. And just when we come in the 2019, in the end of 2018, in the December, the 19th of the December, they start the revolution, all the countries, all the workers, and all the people, they are united, and we start the revolution until we came out in the April, 6th of April, 2019. And until now, the people is still outside the head square army. But the army, they take off to the government, to the al-Bashir, but it's still same system working, it's still to killing us. Even before yesterday, they killed the people in Darfur, in Niala. There was a strike outside the head square in the Niala and has been killed about 24 people, and about 200 has been injured, and there is still same system. Just the Bashir, they said, we arrested the Bashir, but we never saw anyone from the old government has been arrested. All of them, they are free to work, and Bashir, they stay placed in the International Criminal Court and all his government, but until now, nothing happened. We need to ask, we're asking you to support us and to stand with us. We need to step them down, and we need to take them, everyone who has attacked the people and who has killed the people and who has did the genocide in all over the Sudan. We need to take them to the International Criminal Court. And I want to say thanks for having us today to deliver to our message. And thank you to everyone, and thanks to International Workers' Day.
Thank you, Nasser. And you think we have problems? Hey, we have problems trying to get people out to vote. There's the answer if you don't. Okay, the next speaker is Paula Barker, who's Unison Regional Convener. Is that right, Paula? You're learning, aren't you? Yeah, well done. Okay, Paula, thank you.
Comrades, today is one of my favourite days of the year, International Workers' Day. A day when we join together and we enjoy each other's company. A day when we think of the struggles of our brothers and sisters around the globe. And a day when we celebrate the victories that workers have collectively achieved closer to home. Our labour movement has won some significant victories in the past year, and we should take courage, hope and inspiration for the struggles that are ongoing and the many struggles that lie ahead of us. In February and March, Unison members took strike action at Liverpool Women's Hospital. The staff worked as domestics, catering staff, porters, cleaners and security. They work in an NHS hospital, but they are employed by a multinational company called OCS. OCS were choosing not to pay the staff the NHS rate of pay for the job, and instead they were on the minimum wage. That's more than £1 an hour less. The minimum wage is not even the living wage, so this was causing our members real hardship. And it wasn't fair that hospital workers were not being paid the NHS rate for the job. All hospital workers play a vital role in the health service, and they should get NHS rates of pay. Over 40 staff went on strike for 3 days. They had support from the public, their colleagues employed directly in the NHS, and more importantly, comrades, they won. And they're now paid the NHS rates for the job, a pay rise worth more than £2,000 a year for full-time staff, and not before time. But it's not just the Liverpool Women's Hospital where this is an issue. At the Walton Centre, the facilities staff, who are employed by the Danish multinational ISS, voted 100% for strike action to get NHS pay rates, and they received the pay rise without the need to take industrial action. Comrades, we know too well that when we stand together, And when employers know that we have the strength and the will to act, then we can win. And we're in the midst of this struggle as other hospitals in Merseyside right now. At Liverpool Royal, Unite, GMB and Unison members right now are employed by ISS and are involved in ballots for strike action. At St Helens and Wiston, at Liverpool Horse and Chest, Compass Medirest is failing to pay the NHS rates. They're a massive global outsourcing firm. They have plenty of money and they should be paying NHS rates for hospital workers. So Compass Medirest, I've got a message for you today. You better watch out because we're coming to get you. You're not going to be able to get away with underpaying our public service workers in Merseyside for very much longer. But it's not just hospitals throughout Merseyside that are boosting their profits at the expense of their workers. People who work in care right across the northwest are going on strike tomorrow for 7 days of industrial action. They are employed by Alternative Futures Group. The workers, over 600 of them, are only paid the minimum wage for regular hours. But now they don't even get that for working sleep-in shifts. So staff are going to lose more than £2,000 a year because of the cut to their sleep-in payments. Alternative Futures gets its money from local councils all over the region, and they're not putting the money for sleep-ins. Alternative Futures are choosing to pay 29% cut from what the councils pay for their own pockets and purposes. And they choose to pay their executive team much more than any other of their competitors do. Alternative Future is a rogue employer and a rogue organisation. It's not run in the interests of vulnerable people who need the support and care, but in the narrow interests of the cabal of wealthy people at the top. Councils are asking questions about whether they should be paying public money for organisations like AFG. And on Friday, there'll be a rally on these steps at 12 o'clock, and it would be great if you can come along and show your support to our members. And I want to pay tribute to those workers who are going to take strike action, because it's a really difficult thing for anyone to do. But when you are a low-paid care worker, that decision is even harder. And if things don't change, we're going to lose experienced and skilled workers because they simply cannot afford to live on poverty pay. And what a contrast between the hard-working and dedicated frontline public service workers who give so much and get paid so little, and the managers of those who are outsourcing organisations at the top. We all know, brothers and sisters, whose contribution in society is more valuable. And I think this all points to a wider challenge of building a society that works for the many and not the few. For the decent people, working class people, our people, who struggle to get by and try to make the world a better place, and not for the parasites at the top who are always on the take. So what we need to do is get rid of this Tory government. But more than that, we need a Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn, who will introduce a radical programme. We need an active government that protects working class people from risk. That has to mean investing in the public infrastructure and public services that we all rely on. We need serious change across a whole range of issues. We need safe and secure housing and a new generation of council homes. We need our NHS to be properly funded so people know they can get access when they need it. And we need to turf out the profiteers. A better transport system run for the public good, not for profit, where we keep the guard on the train. We need our councils to have the funding they need to provide quality services and to be able to respond to the needs of their local communities. We need our emergency services to have the staff and equipment they need. We need to see an end to profiteering in the probation service and prisons. We need a humane welfare system that does not subject vulnerable people to pressure and insecurity. It falls on this great labour movement, comrades, to struggle for fairness in our workplaces and to build a better, more equitable society based on security and solidarity. Thank you, comrades. Solidarity to all. Enjoy your May Day.
Thank you, Paula. Okay, we all have a responsibility in life, and I think we've been shown a few tricks the last couple of weeks. When we talk about climate change, someone thought it was a band, but obviously when some of the kids, and I mean the young school children, started to take action, strike action, only then people started to wake up. And you can see what's been happening in this country in the last couple of weeks of the actions being taken. Also, we must be conscious of the fact that the fracking, I'll say that slowly, the fracking that's been going on up around Preston, New Road, and the people that have been there for the last couple of years protesting, and they've done everything in their power, and they've really fought against the elements and the people to do something. So today I'm going to recommend, I don't like this method of calling them nannies for fracking. It could be interpreted another way that, so I introduce Tina Rodway.
Thank you so much for the invite. This is the third May Day in 3 days I've done. I did Lancaster, Manchester and here, and I was determined to do them all because one of the greatest gifts in the last 8 years of fighting fracking was when you all came along and joined us. When we ended up with union support, we knew we had power and strength in that unity, and we are eternally grateful. Because the problems you fought against all your lives and all our lives for the workers and for the rights brought about by the greedy bosses and the greedy corporations are the same things that have led us to where we are today, where our children in youth strikes are calling out for our help. Because those same greedy practices have led to the degradation of the very place we live in and the resources we need to literally live and breathe. We cannot go on working the way we are, and that's a tragedy for the worker, because you know that this government and the greedy corporations will make sure that any price paid as we try to save the world falls on our shoulders. But I think that this is a time in history where the environment movement and the workers, the unions, should stand together to demand that we are re-skilled, and if they are going to close industries that are damaging for our children's futures, which they must, that we cannot just preserve our well-being for today, but if they're going to do that, then we need to be re-skilled. They found a great deal of money to set up a contingency plan for Brexit, to pay off companies with no ferries to provide fictitious ferries in the future. We bailed out the banks, but where is the bailout for the planet? They were too big to fail. Are our children not too big to fail? Is nature and wildlife not too big to fail? These things matter, and they possibly matter more even than our own rights today. So I come today in solidarity from Preston New Road, where we've been for 2.5 years, every single day, running the trucks out of the way, trying to take out the supply chain, trying to deter this industry, and I think we might have nearly succeeded. It's from a share price of $1.20 when we started all those years ago to a mere 13 cents today. We know that the greedy frackers don't care about our children. They don't care about our health or our future. What they care about is profit. And we as workers know the way you hit them is in their profit. And as you've shown as unions throughout your history with a non-violent direct action of withdrawing your work labour, we must now start to consider doing this in the future in dangerous industries. You look back at Sydney when they built the Opera House. The one and only green strike ever happened there because they were going to build the car park on Indigenous lands, on sacred lands. And the workers just simply refused. And they had to accept that Sydney Opera House would never have a car park, which was good. But the power that was exerted then for something very important, we need to do as responsible adults now for our children. and perhaps within our unions and within our workplaces. We need to start insisting that if the boss says do that and you know it's wrong, you know it will cause harm to the environment, we need to have the strength within our unions to stand against that. There are currently, you read the booklet, million climate jobs. You look at the Green New Deal coming out of America. None of these is perfect, but they offer us the tools to start changing the way we live our futures so that our children can look to us and say thank you, instead of what I absolutely dread. Because when the IPCC said we've got 12 years, that literally means we have to work every day for 12 years. We don't just wait, because the young people need us to act now. So I would ask once again, as we did 8 years ago, to the unions to please continue to stand with us within the environment movement, to ensure that this is not neglected over anything else, and to insist that although we require our jobs and our rights, none of these should need to be sacrificed within a brave new future that I believe that the unions and the environment movement can insist we bring together. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. So I think that's something what Tina's saying there. It's something that we've got to do for our children, because I'm sure when they get to an age, they're going to ask the same questions about the fracking as they do about the National Health Service. I believe you had it. So that's our responsibilities, to do something about it. So get off the sofa and do something. Okay, our final speaker, I don't know what I'm waiting for. It's a guy, obviously, I've known since he was a young lad. And I say that with sincerity. I'm talking about 8 years of age, when he was on picket lines, when his dad and myself and 500 sack dockers were sacked simply for refusing to cross a picket line. How sad is that? Now, the thing is, after all these years of what they've done, the docks was in utter turmoil. There were scabs coming from all over the place to go and work there. And it's nice to know that our kids can actually rise up like the phoenix from the ashes. But the thing is this, let me tell you this sincerely. The Liverpool docks, Seaford Way, would never be the same today if it wasn't for the people who are fighting there, the likes of Tony Nelson, the likes of Terry T, the likes of John Lynch, who have made it what it is today, and we should be proud of that. Otherwise it would have been a scab prayer. Let me tell you. But nevertheless, you know, it's nice to know there's always a good side to the story, and this is where Ben Carden, the man himself, comes into play. Not only has he been on the picket line many, many times with our kids and other dockers' families, he's actually raised to the pinnacle of being in the shadow cabinet, in this proud shadow cabinet that's going to be the cabinet, the government of the day. And so I want to say to Dan, who is the International Overseas Developing Shadow Minister. So, Dan, do the business, please.
Thank you, Kevin. And friends, it's lovely to be here amongst you all again to mark May Day and to celebrate the great achievements of our trade union movement. So thank you very much for having me. And we've heard 5 wonderful speeches, 5 speeches that tell us a lot about our movement. And it's days like May Day where we have to mark and remember all the achievements of this movement, of the trade union and labour movement over generations. Health and safety legislation, the 40-hour week, stopping discrimination in our workplaces. But this weekend, comrades, it's also 40 years since Margaret Thatcher was first elected to government. And of course, in her 11 years, she passed 7 pieces of anti-trade union legislation. Anti-trade union legislation which the last Labour government did so little to change or scrap. And of course, things will be very different under the next Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn. And comrades, there's 32 million people in work in this country. Of course, many of them on 0 hours or bogus self-employment contracts. But imagine if we had 32 million people in our trade unions, as members of trade unions. What do you think would have happened over 10 years ago when the banks crashed? Do you think workers would be paying for the bankers' mess? No, they wouldn't. So everyone here, join your trade unions and persuade your family and friends to do exactly the same. And I am genuinely proud, and thank you, Kevin, for talking about my background in this city. I'm genuinely proud to be part of this shadow cabinet. It is a radical socialist shadow cabinet. And at the last general election, it wasn't much reported, but we had a 20-point plan for working people in this country. It included banning 0 hours contracts. It included banning unpaid internships. It included a guarantee for trade union access to every workplace, 4 new bank holidays, and a pay ratio so that bosses making money from the public sector couldn't earn more than 20 times the wages of those at the bottom. And it included a promise for a full public inquiry into the scourge of blacklisting. I just want to spend a moment, Kevin, looking at these local election results and the difficulties that Brexit poses in this country. You wouldn't think it from watching the news over the weekend, but the Labour vote held up. There were great victories. In this city, we held 25 out of 30 seats. The Tory party has lost over 1,300 seats across the country. It is divided, it's riven and falling apart. And of course, the one thing that they won't promise us is a general election. They say Jeremy Corbyn can't win one, but they're not offering us a general election anytime soon. And of course now, as Len said, we have many different positions: no deal, deal, a second referendum, and we have the country polarising to the two extremes. But there is only one party, comrades, the Labour Party led by Jeremy Corbyn, that promises a socialist future for this country, that is anti-austerity, that promises to transform our economy. And that's why, comrades, we will not be defined by Brexit. Yes, we'll sort out the Tory mess, Brexit from start to finish, but more importantly, we will put people to work, we'll invest in this economy, and we'll bring about equality and tackle the real division in this society, the division of class, the division of wealth. That's what the next Labour government will do. Tackle insecure, low-paid work. Stop 1.4 million people relying on food banks. The thousands of people sleeping rough on our streets. That's what the next Labour government is committed to. You know, the UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty visited the UK last year in November. He found that 14 million of our fellow citizens were living in poverty. 4 million, more than 50% below the poverty line, and 1.5 million of our fellow citizens destitute. That means they can't feed themselves and they cannot raise their children with dignity. What an absolute disgrace in 2019. And let me just finish, Kevin, by talking a little bit about my new brief in international development. Because, of course, we know what a Jeremy Corbyn-led government can do for the UK, but it can do so much more for the world and to bring about equality and decency across borders. Jeremy Corbyn has been on the right side of history in so many of the major policy decisions in foreign policy. Whether it was when the US backed the neoliberal coup in Chile and backed General Pinochet and kicked out an elected government that was socialist and decent. Or whether it was when Margaret Thatcher backed apartheid in South Africa. Jeremy Corbyn was on the right side of history. And when David Cameron made that disastrous foreign policy decision to bomb Libya, well, we're still seeing the wreaking of havoc there today. And of course, that decision made in 2003 to invade Iraq. Now just imagine if the establishment that were united in those terrible decisions had listened back then to a backbench Jeremy Corbyn. And comrades, you may think that we are under attack from our own media and our own establishment. But what people across the world, the establishment from the US of A to the UK to right across the EU are scared about is electing a socialist leader of the United Kingdom. Because that socialist leader of the United Kingdom will sit on the UN Security Council. He will sit at a seat at the table of NATO, and he'll be part of the G7, the wealthiest countries of the planet. Can you think of anything more exciting than that? And in international development, as Shadow Secretary, we've made some new pledges because we've got a £14 billion aid budget. And I hear sometimes people talk about, well, we've got people sleeping rough on our own streets. And why are we spending aid abroad? But I think we can win that argument. We win it on the basis of our values. If we believe the National Health Service and public free education are some of the finest building blocks for equality in this country, we should believe it for all countries, for developing countries in the global south especially. And so, as Secretary of State for DFID, I will stop the exportation of the botched privatisation models that have done so much damage to our own NHS to developing countries in the global south. And I will spend our aid budget promoting public services, dealing with inequality across the global south, and not using aid to promote false trade and bad trade for the global south. Let me finish on this one point. We're in difficult political times in Westminster, but I think all of us know the real challenges the communities in Liverpool and across this country face. And I don't think anything shows it better than this statistic. There are 26 people in the world who own more than half of all the wealth on this planet. Whilst millions starve and can't feed themselves, 26 people own more wealth than half of humanity. If we can elect a Jeremy Corbyn-led socialist Labour government in this country, we can start to put that right. Thank you very much, Kevin. Comrades, it's lovely to see you all, and thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks, Dan. Doesn't it make you want to join the Labour Party or something? But doesn't it also make you proud, the fact that, you know, you can go from a picket line as a kid into the shadow cabinet? That's what our families, that's what our struggle's all about. That's what we need, more people like the Dan Cardens, because they're the ones who are going to change it. There's no use sitting on your ass saying, oh, I wonder what another can say on Facebook. That's the way you do it. Do it the way Dan does it, and he won't go wrong. Finally, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who came in today. We don't have much control over the weather, we don't have much control over a lot of things, but nevertheless we try, and that's the only thing we can do. So I urge you all to go back to your families, go back to your workplaces, go back to your communities, and work together to make Jeremy Corbyn the next Prime Minister, because that's the way you're going to do it. And also, you know, for everything, I just want to finish on this final note of the night. When I was talking about the ducks before, if Len McCluskey would have been our General Secretary, he'd still be working on the ducks today. But that's history. You've got to learn from history. If you don't learn about history, you don't learn nothing. So I want to congratulate you all for coming today. Keep up the good work. Don't forget, if you don't fight, you lose. If you do fight, you can win. Have a safe journey and have a good day. Thank you.